Imagine Builder.io or any AI generated this entire React application for you. This looks great, but what if you absolutely have no idea how this works? So that's the problem that we're gonna solve today. We're not going to build this page, rather we're going to reverse engineer it until every single piece makes sense. So by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how React creates this page and more importantly, how to read AI generated React code instead of just trusting it. So we had opened our index.tsx, our main landing page. This is where our homepage starts. So what's going to happen is whenever you open this page in the browser, React eventually calls this function. So what I'm talking about here is this export default function index. So think of this as the blueprint for everything we're seeing. And after that, here we're gonna see return. Everything inside this return statement eventually becomes the user interface. So here's my first question. Where does everything starts? So as we can see here, before we render everything, we have this active game variable which calls for a game data, which is an array that starts, and we get the first item, which is 0. So think of this games array. This is called above in this game library game data. If you go look at it, we can see that the games is a collection of array wherein they have data for ID, the opponent, the initial, the score, turn. So everything of this is static. Okay. So later on, if we turn this into dynamic data, where this must uh, will make more sense. But as of now, we're trying to understand the basic idea. We're just calling for the initial data if there is an game that we need to look upon, which is an ongoing game, the active game. As you can see here, so let's see this opponent, active game opponent. So we have get our active game and we're cycling through this opponent data. So meaning React replaces this placeholder with whatever opponent is inside this data. If we go to our browser and point to this word master, this is the data that it fetches. So you can see versus or vs. This is this dynamic data handled through the active game object. So this shows the name word master, which is a name of the opponent in the active game array that we have. Next is if we continue, we have this continue playing. So how does this work? What exactly is this doing, or where exactly am I going once I click this? So if we go back to our code, we can see that if we go to continue playing, okay, this is handled inside a button wherein this button has a link, which is this to games active game dot id. So this is called template string. If we see this active game dot id, this explains if the id is 7, we go to games slash 7. So if you look and go back to our browser, continue playing, we're gonna go to the games played with an opponent named Wordmaster. So our games is currently ongoing based on who we are playing it against. So I am seeing a potential problem in the near future. What if I have more than one games played with this character or this opponent Wordmaster? This means that I can only have one game with this person or with this account, meaning I can play more than one. So most people use ID in targeting these ties. But in this case, we can change it later on. But we understand that the games slash wordmaster is being fetched inside this button that we have. Next is our hero section. So we have this small, beautiful looking, engaging. So we have this hero section, this dark section. This is enclosed inside a section only. This one section that we have. If you try to minimize this, this is the section of our hero section. If we try to understand it more, we see here sparkles. Sparkles is a component that we have. This is just not a random image. It's a React component. Next is this three cards. Why this looks identical? Usually in React, we reuse components that tends to be repeatable. We compress it into one component. So these are the stat cards that we have. So here, if you can see, we have this stat card. There are three, means these three. Active games, 1, average score. Okay, so this is a standard approach in React wherein we reuse the same component 3 times instead of copy pasting it. If we go to stat card and open this, we can see it here below, wherein this accepts a icon, label, value, so that it has its own identity. If you can see here, the icon is different, the title, the label is different, and the value is here, which is makes it unique to one another. So another good thing that we need to understand here is this progress bar. So how does React know that this bar should stop right here? You understand? Like this is the estimation of 68%. How did we know that this board progress is in such condition? So if we go right here and go back to our TypeScript code and check for active game progress. Okay, we see here active game progress. Here, board progress, active game progress. So imagine, since we are seeing here equals 68, React creates a width of 68. So this is a CSS. The 68% value comes from tiles inside a Scrabble game. So meaning the more that you had deployed most of the tiles, that's the progress wherein the game is almost finishing its end. So meaning if there are only 7 tiles in the bag, this is much more near 90%. That's just for example. Next is we can see here the recent games. So did the developer just manually type every row? No. If we can look at it, we can search for the recent games. Okay, recent games, we have this data that we called recent games. Okay, so we have map, meaning we cycle to this recent games object, but we only fetch the first three, right? Yeah, we only get the first three. So recent games is a object that we can see here in our game data library. As of now, this is a static data, but once this becomes dynamic, the more games you played, we fetch based on the recent dates that we have. Okay, so we can see here, we have here green, we have here red. So why is this green but this one other is color red? So in our code, we can see a game result wraps. So this game result calls for a ternary operator wherein if the result is 1, we show a text emerald, text green meaning. Otherwise, we show red rows. So meaning ternary, if this is true, we show green text. Else, if not, we show red. So this is called condition. So one thing that we can get from this approach as we reverse engineer this, everything source of information we can call as data. This data that we have here in library game data, this is dynamically rendered inside our index tsx true into a reusable components, wherein this React components renders in HTML. Therefore, after HTML renders, we can see it here in our browser. So today, we just didn't memorize syntax of our React. We followed the data, then we understand each pieces dynamically, the how it passes through, and that's how exactly you should read AI generated code.